Hello, welcome to Learn Python in 30 days. In today's session, we are going to cover about functions. In our previous session, we have covered conditionals and we'll pick it up from there. Right? People who are watching us on our social channels, you can use our chat to interact with us, leave your comments in the comment section. Let's proceed. Right? I request you to practice as we are executing. Right? Thank you so much. Let me share my screen now. So previously we have covered till conditionals, and this is what we have done, right? So we went ahead and worked out with a few functions. Let me proceed from there, right? So now after conditionals, we'll move into functions and see what are functions, right? So basically functions are blocks of code. Let me just see if my screen is being shared. So basically functions are blocks of code that are reusable, right? So basically if at all you are working in a team, you might want to distribute the work, right? So that is where you make it into functions. Like if there is a person, a construction happening, you can say that this person is going to take care of painting and this person is going to take care of laying the bricks, right? So you delegate functions, right? And that is their function to execute that particular role. Similarly, you can do with programs also, right? So you can, here see an example. This is a function which is trying to calculate the tax that is on a bill, and there is another function which is going to calculate the tip that a customer can give to the restaurant based upon the bill. So you can see that what happens in functions is you want to reuse the piece of code again, and you do not want to write the definition every time. So that is also there, and it's also a very good way to collate all your functions and put it in a file and use those functions whenever you want to, so you don't have to rewrite them. So these are reusable piece of code, and instead of rewriting the whole code every time, you can use a function and write much cleaner code, right? So let me go ahead and show you a little bit more about it, right? Now, what is a call and response, right? So let us learn by exercise. So I request you to go to Collab. Let me also show how to go with, to use Collab. If you're first time watching this session and you've not watched previous sessions, I request you to also go through them. But in the meanwhile, you can independently work like this. Great. Now you have a good Collab. When you open Collab, you'll be able to work online, right? You don't have to install anything, right? So this was the file that we were using previously. You can create a new notebook as well, right? So I'm going to use the same file because a few portions of the code we can reuse, right? So this is what we have learned yesterday. We made Python think based upon a few statements, right? So it was able to take decisions and score and grade a person based upon the score, right? So I'm going to add the functions now, and I'm going to put a code cell here. Now let's go ahead and see what this code is going to do. Okay, right? So I'm going to remove whatever is not necessary. Right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to create a function by the name square, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to put a word called definition in front of it, right? So now if you see here, this will be the name of the function. This is the definition of the function. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put here something called parameter, right? So, or when you are defining the function, it's also called an argument, right? So if you see here, if there's any function, you pass something as an input to it, right? So that is nothing but the parameter, and while you are defining the function, it is called an argument. So this function is taking a single argument. We also see a few functions that take multiple arguments, right? So these are custom functions. There are a lot of predefined functions like input, print, and many others, right? So let's go forward and see what we can do. So like an if condition, you have to say that whatever comes below this is going to be the block of code. So how do you do that? And you can see that here, that whatever you type in below is going to become your block of code or the definition of the function, right? So let's try to square a number here, right? So now if you see here, what we are trying to do is, to this function we are passing in the argument n, right? So now we are saying we are creating another variable called square, and we are going to say equal to n into n. So this is what we are doing, and below that what we are saying is print square of a function, square of the number is, I'm going to say comma and say squared, right? So this is what you can do, right? So if at all you want to make it a little more easier, you can even do this like we did in our previous session. The square of the number, instead of this, square of, you can say percentage d, and say here the percentage of modulo symbol, and then say square comma squared. So what it will do, it will start executing this, and whenever it sees a percentage, it will take the first input from these particular parentheses, right? So it will say square of this number is this, right? So this is what it's going to do. Now what I'm going to do is also going to do something called a return statement, and I'm going to say return square, right? So I'm also going to explain what is this return. So first, let's see if this runs without any errors. Okay, so now you can see if you are new to Collab, whenever you initiate your first function, it's going to, allocate a little RAM and disk to it. Then it will start performing, right? Okay. Yes, so I think here the block of code, let me try to do that again. Okay, so I hope it is asking for a bracket. Let me go ahead and do that. Okay, let me share my screen. It's always important to learn how these errors work. So now you can see that the error is being shown here. I'm going to say here. First, let me just go and make it simpler. Yes, so you can see that when you commented this, you understood that the error is coming from here. So let's see the syntax of this here. Maybe it is the parentheses. Okay, yes, this is the parentheses. Let's try to do put up another parenthesis here and run it. Great, right? So now we have defined the function. So then there is something called a function call. So in other place, the function definition is already done, and you can now use another statement called a function call. So how do you do that? You say square, and then you pass in a number. So for example, if you want to do square of 9, right? So because the name of the function is square, now 9 is the parameter that you're passing, and 9 will be taken in place of n, and the variable squared will become 9 into 9, and it is going to print square of n is going to be square, and the square of n is going to be squared. So where I notice a small issue, right? The square of n is the squared. Okay, so let me run this once again. Okay, so I'm going to run this again. Right, so you can see that the square of 9 is 81. Right, so now you have defined a function to make always give a square. So now, without trying to change anything in the function, you can make changes within the function. You can say the square of 25, and it's going to say square of 25 is 625. So this is what we are printing. But what is this 625 that is coming here? So we've written, we have, typed in a return statement, and let us try to understand what it does. So not every time I'd want to print something, I'd want some output also. So basically what happens is many times functions take an input. One function takes an input from another function. So in that case, the return statements become very useful. Like basically the chef gives whatever he has cooked to the person who is doing the service, right? So you have to pass it on. So in that cases, so what you do here is, I'm going to create another variable, let's call it result. Now you can see that the return statement will, whatever is being processed, and it will return that and save it in the variable that you're creating, right? So now what I'm going to do is, I can use in another code cell or some other place the value of result, right? So maybe you're trying to do something like print result plus 1 or into something, right? So you want to always do that, right? So this is what you need. So the result will have the returned value of the function, right? So let me go ahead and try to run this. At first I have to run this. Okay. Now you can see that it gave me 626 because result was 625 and plus 1 gave me an output, right? So this is how a function works, and this particular portion is called the function header, and this is the response or the return statement. So this is what is happening here, and this is a function call. Right, so there are a lot of predefined functions also. Now this was a custom function. Let's try to see a few predefined functions, right? One of such functions is max. So I'm going to use the same variable result, and I'm going to say max of, so you can give any numbers. Right? So when you give, now this particular function is taking multiple parameters, and if you try to count the result, you can see that here it's going to print the maximum out of this, right? Yeah, so if there's a bigger number, it's going to give that number. Similarly, if you want to use minimum, they can also do that. If you have the least of these numbers, let me try this. It's going to give me the minimum out of all of these, right? So these are an inbuilt function. The function definition is already within Python. So that is why you're not, you do not have to write these functions once again, right? So I hope the concept of functions is clear. Now let us try to convert the piece of code that we have written yesterday for the score grading into a function, right? So I'm going to make another code cell here. So what we're trying to do here is same thing, right? If a student gets over 90, he should get an A. If he's getting between 65 and 89, he should get a B. And anything below 65 should receive an F, right? So here we are taking this score in the score variable, the input, right? So now I'm going to put this into a function. So that is very easy to do because you have all the logic set. The only thing that you have to take care is this indentation, right? So now whenever you see this particular statement or condition, all the statements that are below that condition and a little towards the right? So you can see that this particular spacing here is called nothing but indentation, right? So you have to indent the block of code below any specific condition or a function definition so that it becomes part of that particular head, right? So now I'm going to say define a function called, let's call it grader, and I'm going to pass within that let's say score, right? And let's take this input outside the function, and I'm going to put all of these points towards the left a little, right? So now what is going to happen here is whatever input is going to come here, it is going to process it and give us an output. So I'm not using a return statement just yet. Now I'm just trying to see if it is going to execute. Right, so it's asking me to enter code, and I'm going to enter 90 because this is outside the function block, right? So I'm going to run it. So you can see that there's no output that it has given because now the function call did not happen. Only what happened is this particular program. So how a program in Python works is it comes from the top in a sequential manner. So it came till here and asked the score input, but once it came in here, it understood, okay, it seems like I don't have to run this because there's no function call, it's only definition, right? So now what I'm going to do here is first give you the assessment of how the function call could be, right? So maybe we want to say result, and I'm going to say equal to grader of, like, I'm calling the function and grade, and I'm going to call it, let's name our function grade, okay? Not grade, okay? So let's call it grade. So I'm going to say result equal to grade of, say, 95, right? So this 95 is the score, right? So now we might want to send this 95 here, right? So for that reason, I'm going to take this score from here. I'm going to just write it where I'm going to make the function call just before my function call, right? So this definition does not require to take the input here, right? So here the function call is happening. So this is the function definition. And here it is function, right? Sorry, not here, here. Now, if I'm going to run this, the function definition is clear. I'm going to run this. First, we'll take the input and save it in score and pass that score here. So instead of 99, 95, I'm going to say pass score. So whatever I'm taking as an input is going to be passed here, and then the function will execute based upon whatever the input is, and is going to save the output in this result, right? So you can note that I'm not printing the result. So I can say now print I'm going to say the grade for person B is, yeah, so it's going to run, because we've already done this, it is going to come up here. So I'm going to say here instead of that, the grade is comma result, right? So now what this should do is, this will definitely go ahead and print, but there is no return statement in here, right? So let's first try to run this without the print statement here. Right? So you'll get a better idea. Okay, so now I'm going to run it, and I'm going to say 85, right? So when I enter this, what happened here is the 85 went into the function grade, and it came here and said, okay, now score greater than or equal to 90, it says false, and then it comes here, is it greater than 65? Yes. And is it less than 89? Yes. And this is true. Then print this, right? So it went and printed the score of percentage, which was whatever the number that was given, 85. The grade is B, right? So that has come here, right? But if at all you want to give a return statement and save that result somewhere, you might want to give a return this way, right? So I'm going to say a return, let's say this like this. I'm going to say A, return A, and I'm going to first run this and see if that works, right? So now I'm going to print the grade is the result also, right? So let me go ahead and run that. So now what is happening? If I'm going to give an input that is greater than 90, equal to 90 or greater than 90, so this function will run and that output will be printed here, right? So let me go ahead and run this. Let's give an input that is greater than 90, press enter. Right? So now you can see that this was an internal print statement and this was the returned value. The grade is A, right? So now, which means A is being stored in the variable result, which you can use later also, right? Based upon if result is A, B, or C, give him a rank or something, right? So that is what you can do. So similarly, you can have, if you are using conditionals, then you can say if print this and return B, and in the other case, print that and return C, right? So now our function seems complete. So let me go ahead, run the function, and then run our input, right? So I'm going to say 45, enter score of 45, grade is F, the score is 45, grade is F, and the grade is C. Okay, so I'm sorry, here it should be F, right? So I'm going to do that once again. Say 45, grade is, score is 45, grade is F. Yeah, so grade is F. Now, in any other cell, if at all you wanted to use what was the grade, like you wanted to just check what is the grade right now, you can always go ahead and work with that particular variable, right? So you can always print the result, which you can use in another function. So you can always have that result saved in that particular variable because it was returned and saved there, right? So this is how you work with functions, right? Similarly, let me also run you with a few essentials of functions, right? So we understood the function call, we understood the function responses also, we understood the parameters and arguments, right? So whenever you are defining, you can give the parameters, and whenever you want to call the function, you're going to call that as an argument, right? So you're going to give that two arguments here, right? So if say base comma exponent, you can see that, you can see here it is result is base to the power exponent. So the double hashtag or two multiplications means this is, if for example we are saying 2 comma 3, result will be 2 power 3, right? And you can see that we are printing that particular statement. So first we are printing base to the power of exponent is the result, right? So that is going to be printed, and you can pass in here 2 comma 3, right? So these are parameters and these are arguments, right? So that is something important that you can remember. So these are parameters and arguments of functions. And there's also another way where functions can call functions, right? So now if you remember in our statements, when we are doing a function, you're calling print statements within. So there is a function which is calling another function. So in this particular example, what we're doing is there's a second function which is taking an input m, and it is going to return the whatever the function call of 1 plus something else, so some more operation happening. So there is also a way where you can call where a function can also call other function, right? So for example, you want to first generate a prime number in one function and say square of that prime number, right? So you can just go ahead, define square of prime and pass a number and say return the function 1, which is going to be the square of m into square of m, right? So basically it could be like that. So you can work it in that particular fashion. This is functions calling functions. It's definitely useful in many cases, right? So yeah, so we have done our practice, we've done our example. You can do similarly for cube. You can then divide it by 3 and do a lot of different functions in a similar manner. Here you can see there is a by 3 function which is taking number as the parameter when the function is going to call. For example, somebody passes let's say 9, right? So it is going to check if this number is divisible by 3. So what is going to take number modulo 3? If it is equal to 0, then the cube number is basically there's a variable that is going to be created which is calling the other function cube, right? So cube of 9, right? So and it is going to return that particular number. So what is this function doing is if it is divisible by 3, then return the cube of that particular number, right? So this is what is happening here, right? So there are a few other portions also. So many times you don't want to create functions every time. So there might be your team which is giving you a set of functions and you just have to go ahead and do the function calls, right? So here you can see generic imports. Now I'm going to show you how these imports work, right? So let me go ahead and show. So now there are a lot of functions that Python has predefined, right? So when you're working with Excel, you can see that there's a few formulas that are predefined. Similarly, in Python also, you can import a specific set of module or library, and you can use the functions or data within that, right? So one of such function import is this, right? This is something that also will become very useful as you proceed forward. Let me share my screen. Now I'm going to create a new block of code. You can see that what I'm doing here is import math, right? So there is a module called math, which is going to have a lot of functions, right? So now if you see this particular print statement here, it is doing math of square root, math dot square root, which means this is called the dot notation, and it is calling a function that is predefined in math. So what is it's going to do? It is going to do the square root of 25, right? So if I run it, it has given me the square root of 25, and you can see that there is nowhere the function has been defined, right? So the function is defined within this import math, right? So within this math module, and when you import it, this is a keyword of Python where you can import other modules, and you can see that all the functions that were there, you can use them now. We have just used one, and there are a lot of functions. So if at all you want to know what all functions are there, you can always go and do functions in math module in Python, right? So you can go and see one of them we used is the square root, right? This is what we have used, but there is a can, there is sine, there is reminder, there is power, there is log, and there are a lot of mathematical things. There's exponent, there's cos, and all of this, right? Based upon your use case, you can use any of these other functions, and you do not have to know the logic behind it, how the logarithm was done, how the factorial was done. You do not have to know all of that, right? So you just have to know there's a function that exists, and this is how you have to call it. And if at all you want to know a little bit more about it, you can understand it from here, right? So now that is how you work with import and print or work with the output of it, right? So let's go into the understanding of the other statements. Yes, now you can see similarly, there are a few inbuilt functions also. We'll also cover our other imports as we go forward, but this generic imports is something that we keep doing, right? So now if you see few inbuilt functions, we have also seen max and minimum, and there are other functions like absolute, right? So absolute returns if the number is negative, it's going to return the positive of it, right? So it is more like a mod operator, right? So it is going to say you are going to get the absolute value, not positive or negative of it, right? So you're going to get the absolute value of that particular variable, right? So type is also an inbuilt function. We have used it previously. If it is type of 42, it is going to give integer. Here it is going to give float class, and here it is going to give string class, right? So these are a few inbuilt functions. So this brings to the conclusion of this particular session. I hope this session was useful, and if you have any questions, you can put it in the comment section, and you can go ahead and to strengthen your learning. As if you're running using the Collab file, you can put up your top 3 learnings in the comment section and let us know what is that you found very interesting in here, right? Thank you so much. And if it is first time you're visiting our channel, go ahead, like the channel, like the video, and subscribe to us. Thank you so much. In our next session, we are going to see a little bit more about lists. Yes, see you in our next session. Thank you so much.